hopefully somebody said hello to you and you feel welcome here today. A good place to find some information about our church would be through our mobile app. You can find that through your mobile app store, Apple or Android, and it's great. There's sermon notes. You can follow along with the sermon and make notes and save those in your phone. You can read your Bible. You can read our bulletin. You can listen to or watch past sermons and kind of catch up on anything you might have missed that way. The most important thing, though, for new folks is that we'd love for you to fill out that little electronic Connect card. You can press on that button, fill out that form, let us know that you're here. Of course, we'd love to meet you in person as well, but that's a great way to get information from us and tell us what information you're looking for specifically about Union Chapel, and we'll be happy to reach out to you that way. A couple things coming down the line. Next Sunday, we're going to have our chili cook-off, November 5th. Upstairs, throw down on the chili. So hope you're getting your chili recipes ready. Literally, there's nothing else we do this night. There's no other program or formalities. It's about chili and hanging out together and being together. So this year, you may have heard me mention this once before, but this year we're adding pies to the competition throwdown. So consider a chili and pie off. How do you say that? Chili cook off, pie off. But we're going to do that. So if you're more of a dessert person, you can do that. But everyone bring food. You can bring cornbread or a side if that's not your thing. We'll have a little bit more information next week. The most important thing to know, though, is that if you're planning on entering a chili or a pie in the competition, we're going to ask you to come about 45 minutes early. We'll kind of get your allergy stuff labeled correctly. On your chili, we'll get you a number so that people can vote for your chili and all that good stuff. So should be a really good week. That 5 p.m. will feel a little bit more like 4 p.m. because next week is also daylight saving time. I learned this a couple years ago, and I'm one of those words people, and now it bugs me whenever I hear savings time, because that's what I've said my whole life. But it's technically saving time, daylight saving time. I'm educating you this morning. You're welcome. Daylight saving time is next week. Your iPhones will tell you that, or your mobile phones will tell you that as well, but you can plan for that, plan accordingly so that you don't miss the services next week. A couple of ways you can connect here at Union Chapel. I think I just want to draw some attention to this week is our home communities. Our home communities are kind of that next level of connection. It's a hard thing to get to know people on a Sunday morning, to stick around. Sometimes it feels awkward to stick around and just be like, hi, to random people, which is hard. And a lot of you have done that, and you work well at that. But if that's not your thing, if that's really hard for you, if you'd much rather have a smaller group of people and get to know people in a more intentional way, home communities are for you. We have a number of them spread throughout the county, and you can find them online. Most of them share dinner. Some of them are every week. Some of them are every other week. Some have lots of kids. Some don't. Most do. But home communities are just a great place to get to know people and connect beyond a Sunday morning and share life together. So you can contact Chris for more information. He'd be happy to kind of plug you into a home community, or you can browse them online and send an email to a group leader of a group that you might be interested in. Just want to draw your attention to that. Last thing I want to draw your attention to, another way to connect, easy way to connect is to serve and to be a part of what's going on here. We just have a little bit of need that I want to draw your attention to around ushers and security. Our ushers do a great job of setting out communion and helping people find seats in this room, taking our offering, and that's really the whole of what our ushers do. And then our security just keeps an eye mostly on our kids' space and just keeping an eye on who's moving in and out of our kids' space, and that those people are appropriate. And so really important pieces, but also really easy ways to connect. You don't have to be somebody capable of running a soundboard or playing an instrument. You can just jump right into these teams. We'd love to have you do that. And you can send me an email if you're interested in doing that. That would be great. Also a good one to be able to sit one and serve one. So if you're not wanting to miss any of the service, you could come to a 9 and serve at the 11, or vice versa. I think that's all I have in terms of announcements, which is a lot less than weeks past. So I want to just draw our attention now to our offering as we give our offering together. This isn't something we expect of anybody who might be visiting. We're just glad that you're here. This is a way for those of us who consider Union Chapel home to worship together. So would you pray this prayer with me? Generous God, over and over your grace sustains us. Over and over your love provides for us. Over and over your arm steadies us. We give you these gifts with gratitude and joy, thankful that you are God over all. Amen.
Morning, afternoon, whatever. Don't forget, it's daylight savings time next week. I'm not a word guy. I'm more of a charades guy. I'm grounded. Thank you. It is getting darker. It feels a little nicer at the 11 o'clock. Like, takes a little energy to get to the 9, so 11's, yeah, a little cozier, totally. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I think I'd be hitting the 11 o'clock today. That's how I was feeling. So hopefully I'm good and warmed up for you now, and all the kinks are out. It's good to be with you this morning. We're in a series called The Kingdom of Heaven. It's a series on the Sermon on the Mount. So if you have a Bible, you can turn to Matthew chapter 5, where we've just moved out of the Beatitudes and looked at kind of the kingdom identity of salt and light. And we get to this little paragraph that follows. And I'll read it here in just a moment. But I do just want to jump right in. Our relationship to the law is really what this passage is about. And our relationship to the law is an interesting one. We know that the law is good, and yet we break the law. It's kind of this complicated, tension-filled relationship. For instance, right now, who's bought Halloween candy? I'm on the front end of that this year because I waited till the last day, and it was like $90 for a Kit Kat bar. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So there's a law in my house. Don't eat the Halloween candy that we've bought to pass out to our neighbors. Don't hand it out yet. Or don't eat it. Don't hand it out. That'd be weird. Like, people come to your door, you hand it out. No, don't eat it yet. That's the law. And yet, I have relaxed the law in my house. And the boys now are a little bit confused because now the law's back in place. Don't eat the candy now. And so my boys are like, hey, Dad, what's the deal? Are we eating candy or are we not eating candy? Like, what's the deal? What's with this? And I think as I come to this passage, I know it seems odd. It's a little Halloween intro for you right there. I do think there's a little bit of that feeling when it comes to this passage specifically. Jesus was a problem to his contemporaries, to the leaders of religious law, the Pharisees and the scribes. He wasn't trained like them. He was a carpenter. He didn't go to school where they went to school. And he spent a lot of his time denouncing these teachers of the law, these leaders. He preached radical grace and love, stories like the prodigal son, of this radical acceptance by God the Father. And to the point, he didn't observe their rules and regulations and even broke them on purpose. You think about, there's times when he goes to heal on the Sabbath just to kind of rub it in their nose, because they would say that was work and breaking the law. So he actually breaks these rules and regulations. So he's this kind of this rabble-rouser a little bit to these guys. He's from this out-of-the-way town, this carpenter, and yet he's gaining traction. He's preaching, he's teaching, and people are responding. And Jesus can kind of sense that people don't know what to do with him quite. They're listening to him. You have these crowds, and yet is Jesus respect the law? What does Jesus think of the law? You see Jesus challenging the law and pushing these leaders that are committed to the law, and he's over here eating with people that these leaders would never even eat with or spend time with. And so the question begins to arise, like, what does Jesus think about the law? And so Jesus says this. He kind of is clarifying his relationship to the law. You can follow along. It says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Right? So there's a sense of like, hey, Jesus, like, I thought we were loosening up the rules. It was all grace. And now, like, is it law? Like the greatest? Like, we have to obey the law? Like, what's happening here? Where are we at with the law? And what Jesus is doing, very specifically, he is affirming his commitment to God's law and clarifying that he is not doing away with the law, but fulfilling it. He said, I'm actually fulfilling this law. And at the same time, I would say he's affirming the usefulness and the goodness of the law. He's saying, no, the law is actually beautiful. Don't think that I'm getting rid of it. The law is useful and good. One of the purposes of the law is to bring goodness, is to facilitate goodness. It brings order out of chaos. When you live in a society that has laws and regulations, there is a goodness that emerges. There's an order that emerges that is really helpful. Whether it's street signs and roads and cleanliness, there is this order that comes from a land that's filled with laws. And God is constantly a God who's doing this. Even from the beginning in Genesis, he hovers over the chaos and he's bringing order. He's ordering. He said, here's a rhythm to how life will work. There's an order. It's not just this crazy chaos. And the order is there to bring a fullness, a goodness. This is the Ten Commandments. In the Exodus, the Israelites, God's people, he pulls them out of this oppressive governmental system. They're slaves, pulls them out into the wilderness. And one of the first things he does is he gives them these 10 commands. And he's saying these 10 commandments are for your good. They'll order your society. They'll order your relationships. And it will bring a goodness to bear in the life of the community, to this nation. Psalm 119 is an interesting idea on this topic of the law. Psalm 119 is actually just an ode. It's like a love letter to the law. Really is this heart language of like, and you don't think about that, of like people really enjoying the law with their heart and going like, oh, you're almost treating it like poetry. Like, I'm so thankful for the speed limit. It's just so good for my soul when I see those. And maybe you say that, but typically it's not that response. Yet Psalm 119 is this kind of this exploration saying there's a goodness to the law. Just listen to how the psalmist speaks to the law. This is Psalm 119. It's a huge psalm. Verse 97. Oh, how I love your law. It is my meditation all the day. Your commandment makes me wiser than my enemies, for it is ever with me. I do not turn aside from your rules, for you have taught me. How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through your precepts I get understanding. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your testimonies are my heritage forever. They are the joy of my heart. I incline my heart to perform your statutes forever to the end. Your law, your testimonies, they are the joy of my heart. This is what the psalmist is saying about the law. That there is a sweetness and there's a light and a goodness that the law provides. We kind of get this like we just label the law as nasty. Like law, bad, grace, good. And that's all we think of. And I think Jesus is saying, let's spend some time and kind of separate this out. There's a goodness to the law. And none of it will pass away. It stands as something that is beautiful. Jesus doesn't deny. He says this law is good and should be practiced. Helpful distinction. I think Dallas Willard said this, that the law is not the source of our virtue or our righteousness. It's not the source of our righteousness. It is the course of our virtue. It is the course we take. It's the curriculum. It's not the source. So we don't go to the law to make ourselves better. It is the course. It's not the source. It's the course of virtue and righteousness. Paul says it's the mentor. It's the tutor that's teaching you, that's training you for goodness. that there's a purpose to the law. Can we put that slide back up? As I was rereading this morning, this is what stuck out to me at the very end. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. I think this is a lot of our time right now, is going, what does it look like to practice the law? Jesus is going to fulfill it. He has fulfilled it, but he's saying there's a goodness to practicing and teaching. That as you practice the law, there is an inner shaping that begins to happen, that there's a goodness there. I loved Q. Anybody go to Q on Thursday? A couple of you. Yeah, I really loved the first talk. David Brooks talked about this idea of cultivating virtue. And he said he did this study over a lot of different characters throughout history that started out as lame 20-year-olds and were amazing 70-year-olds. And basically said, what happened? What did they cultivate? What was it? Had some fascinating insights. But one of the things he said is that each one of these people found their besetting sin and worked on it. From Dwight Eisenhower to Augustine. They said, this is the thing that's just going to set me back. And they just worked on it and said, you know what? I'm going to spend time looking at and practicing and going, yes, I'm going to fail. Yes, you're going to fail. You're not going to keep the law wholly perfectly. Jesus will. But there's a goodness to practicing. There's a shaping. It's funny, this language. It's why we kind of reorienting around practice. That's why I love sports, is because there's a natural rhythm of just failing. Like you're constantly failing. Like you rarely get it right. Like if you're batting amazingly in baseball, you're batting like 3 out of 10. So you're constant. Anybody watch the World Series last night? Yeah? Like 2 of us? Great. Not a lot of sports fans in here. To be fair, it's the first game I watched all season, and I started at the 7th inning. But it was a great time to start watching. As this first baseman, this rookie first baseman for the Dodgers, hadn't hit in 15 at-bats. And it's tied 1-1. He steps up, and he hadn't been pulled off the lineup. This is in the post, yeah. Not so, yeah, somebody. There you go. You guys geek out over it over there. He comes up, and he pops this double, and he's the scoring run to put him ahead. 15 times he's failed, and yet the coach says, it's okay. Like, keep working at it. Keep working at it. Keep practicing it. I think we have to find this goodness in the law again. I'm going like, the law is not going to save you. Jesus is going to save you, but Jesus is saying the law is good. I haven't come to abolish it. There's a goodness. And in my kingdom, it will be people who look and are shaped like me because of my work in their heart. That this is possible, that you can practice and teach this law. Jesus will fulfill it. Leave that to him. You practice it. What does it mean that Jesus will fulfill it? He will live a life that keeps the law in its absolute completeness. And it's not just this rigid sense of like, I kept all the laws. When you look at Jesus' life, it's a beautiful life. It's a risky life. It's a dangerous life. It's a life filled with love and beauty and confrontation and risk. And that's what a life looks like, lived in complete trust and complete dependence on the Father, fulfilling what the law looks like. He did live that perfect life of trust in relationship to the Father. So this is what it looks like for him to fulfill it. Then he kind of doubles down and almost like sinks it in further. This is how he finishes this passage. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, the Pharisees were all about the law. So it seems like Jesus, are you saying we have to do even more than they did? That feels daunting. Because they were nuts when it came to the law. They had the law, and then they had this thing, they would build this literal hedge. When you think about a hedge, it keeps things out. So they would build a hedge of laws around these laws so that you would never break these laws. And then they would build a hedge around the other hedge, just hedges on hedges of laws so that you could never get and really break this law that they were protecting. They were nuts about the law. But they completely whiffed on the essence of what the law was there for. They whiffed. They missed the heart. They were concerned with the outward appearance of keeping the law, but completely missed the point of the law, which was to shape your heart. The clearest picture of this, I think, when Jesus calls this out all the time, he talks about dishwashers. Matthew 23, he says this. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may be clean." He's saying, listen, their righteousness is a righteousness that just cares about what other people see. So it's just trying to keep up and look good for other people. That's the essence of their righteousness. And Jesus is saying, I'm going for your heart, for a beautiful life, and inner tranquility and peace and courage. I don't care about the outside. I want the inside. Dallas Willard said it just great when he was describing the Pharisees. He said, they're intensely self-conscious about doing the right thing and about being thought to have done the right thing. But the inner dimensions of their personality, their heart and character, are left to remain contrary to what God has required. I love that language, the inner dimensions of their heart, the inner dimensions of their personality, it just left dirty. It's like you're just trying to present this false self of goodness. And they've neglected. So Jesus is saying, hey, you're going to have to surpass it because I'm about your heart. I'm shaping you into kingdom people that will live out of your heart, out of your desires. The essence of Jesus' work is getting to our hearts. And the next section is really tough. The next couple of weeks, where he goes through anger, lust, marriage, patience, forgiveness. And he's going to move everything back to say, like, yeah, you've heard it said just to make sure and do this. I'm talking about your heart. We got to get to your heart, and that's where change happens. He will point out that it's not about the outside, this blind religious observance. It's about your heart. So he can say, like, your righteousness, your virtue has to surpass these teachers. This is the righteousness, the goodness, the virtue that they never reached. 2 weeks ago, you get to the end of why this group crucified Jesus. It was because out of envy, right? That's the inner dimension of your heart. They were so envious of Jesus' life that they killed him, all while trying to look good and look like they were keeping the law, right? Jesus gets killed for being blasphemous. He was good. They're trying to look good, and they kill him for it. Jesus is saying, I'm aiming at your heart, and to be someone who is about my kingdom, it is about our hearts. So it may seem like a daunting thing to say, your righteousness must surpass the Pharisees. I do think it's true that in the kingdom of God, blind righteousness has no place. You must look to your heart. It's of no use. He's like, you're just like an empty tomb. If you're just trying to look good, it's literally of no use. I want your heart. Jesus is reorienting us back to the heart of the law and the prophets, which he sums up is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. This is what the law was trying to produce, this loving, trusting relationship. I was thinking about, I have a little slide here. I have amazing, complex, beautiful, as Adam would say. It's a beautiful form, a beautiful slide. I think gives kind of a helpful little picture about the law. When there's no trust, the need for the law increases. So there's a simplicity. God says, hey, here's 10, and it takes Israel like a second. I don't even think it's 15 seconds, right? They're down the mountain, and they've broken it. And then where sin increases, the law increases. So it's like, well, okay, here's some more laws. Here's some more laws around this, and here's more laws around this because trust has been broken. And this is the Pharisees, right? They just keep building hedges and hedges, just law upon law upon law, which this is how it happens in life. Like if you're in high school and you stay out super late and don't tell your parents for the first time, what happens? Boom, curfew. Maybe grounded. These guys sat in the first service, so they know all the answers. I got to like preach a new sermon. Curfew, right? Then you break curfew. Then what is it? Curfew gets moved closer. Now it's like it's not 10, it's 8 o'clock. And then you break that, and then it's like, now I'm taking your car away. Now you just stay in the house. Right? When there's no trust, the law just keeps increasing. And this is how it works just in society, right? Like, we suspend your license, then we take away your license, then we actually put you on house arrest where you cannot move. You have a little bracelet on your foot, and that's the nature of it, is that the laws, when trust is broken, the law increases. And yet when trust begins to be restored, the rules and the laws start trimming back. The point isn't to keep all the rules all the time. The point is to be in a trusting relationship. This is the point of the law. God is working towards this, to be back in right, trusting, good relationship. When you can trust that someone else has your best interest at heart, even in a marriage, there's more trust. There's less rules. Because you know that person, wherever they are, they're holding you in their heart. There's a trust there. Trusting that you will act with everyone's best interest. This is the perfect law that Jesus fulfills. He has everyone's best interests at heart. And he fulfills this trusting, perfect relationship. And he says, not only do I give you, and this is the key right here, why you can aim everything at the heart. Saying, I want you to practice the law, but I also want you to know that I've fulfilled the law. He says, not only do I give you my death, right? We think of that. We sing about it all the time. Every week we sing about Jesus' death. But he also gives you his life. This perfect life of trust, the fulfilled life, keeping the law to the very point dot, crossed every T, dotted every I. He gives you that. He gives you his life. It's not just his death, he's giving you his life. He says, I've fulfilled the law, take my life. It's so simple, and every week we do the same thing. He's literally, take my body and take my blood, this perfect life that I've lived, you take it, and you now have my life. I give you this life. I have fulfilled the, and so you can live like you have fulfilled the law. The law is null and void. I've kept it for you. So practice, fail. Keep moving towards, know that I've created this. It's a great way of formation that he's created this way for us to be completely loved, full of grace. And yet saying, practice, these things are good for your heart and for your soul. The law will not fade away. I think this is what it means to be in Christ. Christ gives you his life and says, come follow me, come learn from me. Let me be your rabbi, practice my ways. I've made a way. I am your righteousness. I am the source. But come, be shaped in these new kingdom ways. Not trying to keep the law as a source of your righteousness, but as this course in rightness and goodness. And let's look at your heart. Let's work. Let's practice. I don't know where you're at this morning. Maybe you are just like, I just need to receive that life. And Jesus says, I gladly give it to you. Like, I don't have anything to bring, Jesus. And he says, great, come and receive my life. Lived in utter perfection and trust with the Father. Come and receive it. I give it to you. I cleanse you of your sin, and I give you my life. And receive that wholeheartedly. Or maybe it's just affections that need to be stirred up for his word again. And going, there's a goodness there. That I'm not looking to the law to try and get my sense of self-worth. There's a goodness there. To approach it and taste the sweetness of the law again. So this morning, I invite you to come mostly to remember Christ's sacrifice on your behalf. Let's pray. Father, thanks for today. Thanks for your word that is a lamp. Spirit, move to the corners of our hearts and minds. The places where we don't know you in your fullness yet, Jesus. We long to know life in its fullness, to be shaped more into your image. We come now to worship and to remember and to receive your very life. We come now with a gratefulness and then even a reverence for what you've done.
And together, and we'll respond in worship. I invite you to come to the table. If you want prayer, there are people that would love to pray with you down here on the left and up on the balcony in the left as well.
Take his